Glück auf YouTube und herzlich willkommen zurück zu Half-Life 2 Episode 2 Kommentar der Entwickler, Kapitel 4, mobile Schrotflinte. So, und das, was ich im letzten Kapitel gesagt habe, das will ich jetzt einmal ausprobieren, weil angeblich wird sie aus dem Auto geschleudert, wenn man mit wahrscheinlich hoher Geschwindigkeit gegen eine Mauer donnert. Okay, warum zur Hölle hat die Karre Allrad und zweitens, warum hat es nicht geklappt? Also entweder haben sie das ausgebaut, dass sie aus dem Auto geschleudert wird. Weil ich meine, das war ja nun fast maximal knapp bei.
A radio tower. If it's working, we need to send a warning to White Forest. They've got no idea the Combine's heading their way. Home. Wonder how long it's been deserted. They must have a transmitter in one of these buildings.
Sie wird nicht aus dem Auto geschleudert.
Even though this compound appears open and non-linear, we're striving for a fairly reliable progression of events so that we can fine-tune pacing. The building on the right is bright and eye-catching, with the intention of drawing the player there first. The entrance to the ruined building is around the back, so that initial exploration through the center of the compound tends to lead to the radio room first. The drop-down entrance from the roof of the ruined building also helps us pace the experience, because players are cautious about committing to a space until they've explored the alternatives.
Ja. So, ich gucke aber trotzdem erstmal außen rum. Einfach nur um zu gucken, ob wir auch irgendwo, beziehungsweise wir können ja erstmal hier. Ja, es ist schon geil. Auch wenn das alles nur hier... Das da sieht ein bisschen so aus, als ob sie sich von Google Maps geklaut haben. So hast du, wenn du einfach nur so ohne Zoom guckst, dann sieht das schon richtig geil aus. Ja, ist schon krass, ja. Das ist... Okay. Die ganze Szenerie, die sie ja aufgebaut haben. Das ist schon geil. So, ich muss mir dann noch langsam mal Gedanken machen, welches Projekt hier noch kommt. Aber ich werde einfach mal in meine Liste gucken. Und dann werdet ihr schon sehen, was danach kommt. Keine Sprechblasen hier. Gucken wir mal hier rein. Ja, but of course. Auch keine Sprechblasen hier. Menü.
Well, here's the transmitter. No power though. Let's see if we can get some electricity going.
Ach ja.
I'll keep a lookout while you poke around inside.
Jo.
This room is designed so that the player will notice the main set of plugs right away, but is less likely to spot the second set at first. One end of the long cable is already plugged in, encouraging the player to grab the loose end and put it into the powered socket. This makes the faulty wire break loose and spark. With the power on, players try to return upstairs only to discover that now the elevator needs power. At this point, they look about more carefully and discover the elevator sockets. The short cord is tucked next to the elevator sockets, so that they're likely to try to use it there first, before realizing they need a longer one. Given this fairly reliable progression of events, we were able to write a limited number of lines for Alex so that she could react each time the puzzle changed state.
Okay. Ja, wie steht's?
Okay, power's on up here.
Was sind das überhaupt für Steckdosen?
Hey, it's off again. What did you do?
Oh.
Gordon, hide.
In earlier versions of the Hunter intro, the Hunters burst physically into the room by shouldering their way through the door.
Out there.
As the Hunter's flechette attack came online, we decided this was no longer appropriate. Now that the Hunter had an effective ranged attack, having him burst into the room with you actually put him into his least viable tactical position during your very first encounter, making him seem ineffective and a bit dumb. The current design is intended to showcase his abilities while giving the player the time and space to understand the situation before pushing out into close combat.
Get over here. Bloody punker. Alex. Oh, fuck's sake. So, durfte ich jetzt.
Warning out and then keep moving. That was probably a scouting party.
The scene where Alex sees the Hunters for the first time since her injury was meant to be a turning point for her as a character, and an emotional highlight for the episode, both for Gordon and for Alex. One reason we had a Hunter injure Alex in the beginning of the episode was so she could have a strong emotional reaction to the creatures, as the start of combat as a way of building a good character moment. Alex's previous encounter has given her a visceral fear of Hunters, but now she has to make a conscious choice to get past her fear and into the right state for fighting them. She uses anger to get there. We also use Alex's intensity to draw the player's attention to subtler aspects of the scene, getting the player in position for the best view of the Hunters as the attack gets underway.
Okay.
Oh, the other thing that's so great about acting for video games, and I guess voiceover in general, but for this particular game, is so amazing. I don't have to worry about hitting my mark or playing to the camera or forgetting my lines. That's usually my biggest thing. You can see the wheels turning on camera because I'm trying to keep up with my lines. But this, they're all right there, so I don't even have to worry about that, and I can just worry about the delivery, the emotional vibe that needs to come across, and just be the sense of immediacy. I don't even have to worry about the words. So that takes a whole other level off to let the actor just get down and into the work, which is really, really great. Which is why I love this job.
Ja, das ist klar. Ja, der Voice Acting ist nicht leicht, aber für Game-Synchros denke ich, ist es schon ein bisschen einfacher, wie wenn du wirklich richtig schauspielern musst. Also so richtig mit Kamera und allem.
This area was designed to train the player in the art of hunter combat, and during the development process it changed continually to suit the hunter's behavior. The first hunter prototypes could be killed only by the blunt impact of physics objects. Therefore, to make sure the player learned this technique, we trapped him in this area with one hunter and kept him locked in until he defeated it. Upon the hunter's death, reinforcements broke down the gate and doors, opening up the arena. As time went on and the hunter was modified to make it vulnerable to all types of damage, our grip on the player gradually relaxed, permitting freedom of movement in a wider range of tactics right from the start of the encounter.
Ja, am besten bist du dran, wenn du explosives Zeug nimmst. Man kriegst die Viecher am ehesten tot oder Double Shot mit der Schrotflinte.
In this brief transmission scene, we are restating the goals of the level, while introducing a note of uncertainty and developing Dr. Magnuson's character. This scene was not strictly necessary, but it helped players feel some connection to Dr. Magnuson when they finally reached White Forest, and met him in person for the first time. In earlier versions, we tried having the hunters cut the power and interrupt the transmission, but this felt arbitrary. Players were more receptive to this scene after they had solved the power puzzles and survived hunter combat. It feels like a small reward in addition to the simple satisfaction of beating the hunters.
What's that? What? You're heading my way? Well, I should hope so. What was that? You're breaking up, Alex. What?
Crap. I wonder if we got any of that.
Wahrscheinlich
Let's
nicht.
get back on the road. Here, let me open the gate. Let's keep going. See if we can pick up the road somewhere ahead.
Hold on. Ist auch lustig, dass der Arsch so dermaßen hoch ist, dass du hinten raus nichts siehst. Nee, ich dachte, ich hätte ja Sprechblase gesehen. Ladedaten.
Hey, I know that peak. You can see it from White Forest. We're heading the right way.
This crashed advisor pod is a bit of storytelling embedded in the landscape. It hints at what lies ahead, while suggesting what must have happened in this location only a few hours before Gordon and Alex arrived. By placing artifacts of this sort throughout the episode, we slowly bring advisors into the foreground and develop their importance to the story in a way that doesn't depend on stage dramatic scenes.
Okay. Okay.
What was that? There it is again.
Das war ein Advisor.
There's an advisor around here someplace.
Pumpkins.
We weren't the first to find this place.
Offensichtlich nicht.
The barn scene was critical both to this episode and to the development of advisors as characters in the series. They represent another intersection of story and gameplay concerns. This is the first time the player actually interacts with an advisor, and determining the right level of interactivity was tricky, especially given the player's reasonable expectation that he'll get to fight them directly at some point. Therefore, we wanted to show that they were powerful, but not invulnerable. This was a long-term goal. For the short term, we wanted to get the player familiar with some advisor behavior, so that when the episode finale occurred, they would already understand how advisors operate. By showing the advisor fumbling with an inert object, then a dead rebel, and finally grabbing the player, We allow the player to observe behavior and then gradually make it more and more of a direct threat. This all serves as foreshadowing for the episode's finale.
Okay.
This swirling debris effect uses much of the same underlying technology that powers our other cinematic physics events in Episode 2, but with a few important differences. Firstly, instead of using primitives, every slat, tile, and beam was modeled before being sent to the rigid body solder. Next, there was a large focus on hand-sculpting world forces in order to achieve a particular behavior in the debris. Beyond the basics of gravity and collisions, we created spiral vortices, gravity wells, and some other more complex forces. With over 1,800 individually calculated dynamic moving parts, for a 30-second period, this simulation represents the largest amount of animation data run through our game engine to date.
Huh. Krass. Aha, Dreckvieh.
Oh my God. Gordon. Thank God you're all right. That thing was hurt. Did you see it? I can only imagine what it would have done if... Uh-oh. Sounds like it called its friends. Soldiers!
Threat level adjustment. Probe. Expunge.
We've gotten better at building combat spaces that are open and tactically versatile, while still directing the player toward an optimal play experience. This combat is on its face pretty straightforward, but we're doing some subtle things to keep the experience even and well-paced. We're using quite a few of our combat tools in this one scene. As the first soldiers enter the barn, we send them in the right direction with an initial cue about the player's location using an NPC enemy finder. The first soldiers serve primarily to draw the player outwards, where the real meat of the combat takes place. The wave of soldiers that spawns as the player rounds the corner to the exit are the most directly controlled. One pair uses assault points to dash across the open ground and flank the player on the right. Others are constrained to hint groups in and around the house across the way, spaced so that the player is hit with an even front of fire, keeping them pinned for a while and encouraging cautious sniping and probing at the windows and doors. The broken down truck gives a vital bit of mid-ground cover as players leave the barn and advance on the house. Finally, as the player leaves the barn, we spawn the reinforcing hunter. We hold this back both to keep the difficulty more even, and because the hunter combat is better when the player has pushed outwards before it begins.
Okay. Come, Alex.
No more. No more. We've got to get out of here. Let's get out of here.
Ouch. Ich hoffe, hier sind jetzt keine versteckten Sprengdosen irgendwo. Das war nämlich besonders mies. Okay. Das nächste Kapitel, weiß ich gar nicht, wann das losgeht.
Here we go.
Ja, bis jetzt.
Our playtesters loved to see the zombie jump on the front of the car, and this naturally encouraged us to want to do more of it. We started off with a high frequency of occurrences of this behavior, treating the zombie leap as a gameplay element that could be played out in variations. Eventually, though, we discovered that this didn't lead to any really interesting gameplay, so we ended up creating just one memorable showcase of the event instead.
Okay.
Oh, crap! We may have to ditch the car.
This way. Since you brought that chopper in on your tail, you want to maybe help us take it down?
Oh, with pleasure.
Oh.
Gordon, I found a first aid cache.
Hey, Sniper, bist du's? Ja, fuck. Yeah. Fucking hell.
Originally, the Episode 2 chopper battle was a classic fight that relied on the use of the RPG. In the meantime, we were experimenting with a completely new way of fighting the chopper, which we had hoped to have ready for Episode 3. The early Episode 3 experiments were so successful that we pulled them straight into Episode 2.
Okay. Sonst hätte sie wahrscheinlich noch bis jetzt noch nie eingesetzt. Weil Episode 3 lässt ja immer noch auf sich warten. So, ich glaube, hier geht's eine Kapitellösung. Weiß ich nicht. So. Genau. Alles klar. Dann sehen wir uns in der nächsten Aufnahmesession. Bis dahin. Macht's gut.